This story is titled, I Have Nothing to Appreciate in Our Intimate Life. My fiancée ridiculed me at a party, so I prepared a stunning revelation that left her speechless. Hey Reddit, I'm a 31-year-old man who has been grinding away at the district attorney's office for 8 years now. My career started at the absolute bottom of the ladder. Fresh out of law school, I began as an assistant DA, handling all the cases that nobody else wanted to touch. Over time, I slowly worked my way up to handling serious felonies, proving myself with each case I took on. Looking back, I used to be a completely different person. During my college years, I played football for State University and was actually pretty good at it. I had scouts from professional teams checking me out and showing interest until I severely damaged my knee during my senior year. That injury effectively ended any prospects of a professional athletic career. Since then, office life and my failing marriage have transformed me into someone I barely recognize anymore. Before I met Claire, my life wasn't anything special. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in the Chicago suburbs. My parents worked incredibly hard for my sister and me. My dad was a firefighter, putting his life on the line every day, while my mom worked as a teacher. They pushed education like it was the golden ticket out of mediocrity. I became the first person in my family to attend college, something they took immense pride in. I met Claire during my second year of law school while she was finishing her business degree. She was gorgeous and ambitious. I honestly thought she was way out of my league. Looking back now, I realize I was actually quite a catch myself. A young lawyer-to-be, former athlete with no baggage or complications. Somehow, though, she managed to convince me that she was the prize in our relationship, that I was the lucky one to have her attention. Fast forward to last week when we attended Thanksgiving dinner with Claire's family. They've always treated me like some kind of outsider, never fully accepting me into their fold. Claire's family is obsessed with status and appearances. Her father is a neurosurgeon, her mother has never worked a day in her life, and her brother Thomas is some hotshot hedge fund manager who never misses an opportunity to brag about his yacht or vacation homes. Their Thanksgiving celebration is always a super formal event. Everyone sits around pretending to be perfect while talking behind the backs of people who aren't present. The turkey is invariably dry as sandpaper, thanks to Claire's mom, Catherine, who thinks black pepper is too spicy for refined palates. Despite all this, I was trying my best to make the most of the evening and maintain a positive attitude. I was deep in conversation with Thomas about some new state laws that might affect his investments when Claire's voice cut through the room like a knife. "Oh, come on," she said with that smirk I've grown to hate over the years. "You guys should be thankful you have something exciting going on in your lives." I can't say the same for what happens in our bedroom. The entire table went dead silent. Her cousin Jack started this awkward laugh that spread around the table like some kind of social disease. I could see Catherine pursing her lips in disapproval, but she said nothing. Her dad suddenly became very interested in the dry turkey on his plate. Even Thomas, who normally enjoys seeing me uncomfortable, actually looked embarrassed on my behalf. I felt the blood rushing to my face as I struggled to keep my composure. What was I supposed to do? Cause a scene at Thanksgiving dinner? Make her look bad in front of her precious family? Instead, I took a long sip of bourbon, tried to act like her words didn't tear me apart inside, and forced a smile that probably looked more like a grimace than anything else. The conversation somehow moved on as her aunt started talking about some charity gala she was organizing. The tension slowly faded, but I wasn't really present anymore. I was just going through the motions, nodding at appropriate times and forcing fake laughter whenever someone made a joke. I kept refilling my bourbon far too often, trying to numb the pain of public humiliation. I caught Thomas giving me sympathetic looks across the table. Even this rich guy, who I'd always considered somewhat of a douchebag, seemed to think Claire had crossed a line. I gave him a slight nod as if to say, "What can you do?" and continued drinking to dull the ache in my chest. This wasn't just some random comment that I could brush off. This was years of Claire's bullshit coming to a head in the most public and humiliating way possible. She had developed a pattern of putting me down in front of others, but this was the most direct and degrading instance yet. Usually, she was more subtle about it. Little jabs about my career progress, snide comments about my appearance, or digs at my family's middle-class background. I guess she decided to go for the kill this time, attacking the most intimate part of our relationship. By the time dessert was served, I had mentally checked out completely. I sat there staring at my slice of pumpkin pie, thinking about how fucking miserable I had become and wondering when exactly I had transformed into this shell of a person who would just silently take this kind of treatment. Something snapped in me that night, though not in some dramatic, table-flipping way. It was more like a quiet realization. I couldn't live like this anymore. More importantly, I wouldn't live like this anymore. Everyone finally left around 10 p.m. I found myself standing in the kitchen washing dishes, replaying that humiliating moment over and over in my head. I looked around our fancy suburban house that we had bought 3 years ago in Oak Park. All stainless steel appliances, granite countertops everywhere. Claire had insisted on all of it, saying that's what successful people have. That night, our house felt more like a prison than a home. Claire walked into the kitchen humming some radio tune, collecting empty wine glasses with that fake host smile still plastered on her face, the one she uses for guests, but never for me when we're alone. "So that little joke at dinner," I said, trying to keep my voice steady while scrubbing cranberry sauce off a serving platter. "Was that really necessary?" She barely glanced at me as she put the glasses in the sink. "Oh my God, Marcus, don't be so sensitive. It was just a joke. Just a fucking joke, right?" I could hear the edge creeping into my voice as I continued. "Because publicly announcing to your entire family that I'm inadequate in bed is comedy gold. A joke about humiliating me in front of your entire family. Real hilarious, Claire." I was still trying to keep it together, but my patience was wearing dangerously thin. She rolled her eyes and let out this exasperated sigh like I was some oversensitive child throwing a tantrum. "Please, nobody even cared. You're acting like I committed some terrible crime. Everyone was laughing. It wasn't a big deal." "It was a big deal to me," I said, turning to face her, still holding the soapy dish in my hand. "How would you feel if I made a joke about your sexual performance in front of my family?" "That's different," she scoffed, grabbing a bottle of wine with some left in it. "How is that different?" "It just is," she replied dismissively, pouring herself another glass. "And anyway, your family would never have a fancy enough dinner for that scenario to even happen." And there it was, another dig at my family. She always thought they were beneath her because my dad was a firefighter and my mom worked extra teaching shifts to put me through college. My parents, who've been married for 35 years and still hold hands when they walk down the street. They might not have fancy dinners with expensive wine and designer plates, but they never publicly humiliate each other. That's when it truly hit me. This had been our pattern since day one of our marriage. The little digs about my salary, even though I made more than enough to support us comfortably. The comments about how I'd let myself go compared to her CrossFit buddy's husband. Always implying that I wasn't good enough. Always in front of other people. Never when we were alone. Always setting me up as the punchline to boost her own ego. "You know what, Claire? I'm done with this conversation," I said, putting down the dish and drying my hands. "You're incapable of understanding how your actions affect other people. I'm tired of trying to explain basic human decency to you." Her eyes widened a bit. I rarely talked back to her like this, which was part of the problem. "Wow, someone's being dramatic tonight," she said with a smirk. "Is it that time of the month for you?" She seemed pleased with her own joke. I just stared at her for a moment, seeing her clearly maybe for the first time. She wasn't the beautiful, confident woman I fell for in law school. She was mean, shallow, and even cruel. I had put up with it for too long, thinking that's what a good husband does. You weather the storms, you compromise, you make it work. But the guy staring back at me in the kitchen window looked beaten down, a shadow of who I used to be. The guy who once commanded a courtroom now couldn't even stand up to his own wife. The former linebacker who used to intimidate opponents now hunched his shoulders and took emotional hit after hit with no defense. Without another word, I walked out of the kitchen, leaving her with the rest of the dishes. It was a small rebellion, but it felt like the first step towards something bigger. I couldn't sleep that night. Claire had passed out next to me, the wine and turkey doing their work. I kept staring at the ceiling, thinking about how we had gotten to this point. Our relationship didn't start this way. The first year of our marriage was actually good. We were both building our careers, had great sex, and talked about our dreams for the future. But slowly, things changed between us. Claire started hanging out with the different crowd wives of surgeons and executives who spent their days at spas and planning charity events they didn't actually care about. She got a job at a prestigious marketing firm and started caring more about appearances than substance. And me? I just wanted to do good work and make a difference as a prosecutor. I wasn't interested in office politics or climbing the social ladder. Claire saw that as a lack of ambition and started making comments about how I should network more, dress better, aim higher. When I pushed back saying I was happy with my career trajectory, she'd act like I was settling for mediocrity. I kept thinking about how Claire had slowly chipped away at my confidence over the years. How she'd roll her eyes when I talked about my cases, how she'd joke with friends about having to train me like some kind of dog, how she'd compare me to her ex Brandon, who was apparently some kind of sex god according to her drunk stories at parties. Stories she'd tell while I was standing right there, and I just took it. I made excuses for her behavior. She had too much to drink, she was just joking around, she didn't really mean it. But lying there in the darkness, I couldn't make excuses anymore. The Thanksgiving comment was the final straw that broke something inside me. I got up at 5 a.m., way before Claire would wake up, especially with all that wine in her system. She wouldn't be up until at least 10 a.m. I didn't bother being quiet as I grabbed my gym bag that had been collecting dust in the closet for the past 2 years and headed out into the morning darkness. My old college teammate Oliver runs a boxing gym on the other side of town. We were close during college. He was my linebacker partner and had my back both on and off the field. After my knee injury ended my potential pro career, he was there for me. We drifted apart after my marriage because Claire thought he was a bad influence since he was single and ran what she called a low-brow business. The last time I saw him was at a mutual friend's wedding 2 years ago, where Claire got drunk and made fun of his date's dress within earshot of everyone. The gym was in an industrial part of town. Not fancy, but real. Heavy bags hung from the ceiling, a ring stood in the center, and weight racks lined the walls. The place smelled like sweat and determination. Walking in, I felt embarrassed about my physical condition. I used to bench 225 pounds for reps, had a six-pack, and commanded respect when I walked into a room. Now I was soft, tired, and pissed off at the world and myself. A few early morning regulars were already there, mostly guys who looked like construction workers getting their training in before work. Some nodded at me, while others ignored the newcomer in their space. Oliver was in the ring with a teenage kid, holding up focus mitts and shouting encouragement. He looked good, still built like a tank, but with some gray in his beard now. He spotted me and did a double take. "Marcus, holy shit, man!" Oliver called out, ducking between the ropes and jumping down from the ring. "Thought you died or your wife put you on house arrest!" I forced a smile as he pulled me into a bear hug. "Something like that," I replied. "Got time to help a has-been get back in shape?" Oliver held me at arm's length, looking me up and down with a critical eye. I knew what he saw. I had put on at least 40 pounds since college, most of it around my middle. My once broad shoulders now slumped forward. But there was no judgment in his eyes, just concern. "For you always, brother," he said, clasping my shoulder firmly. "But what brought this on? Claire finally give you permission to have a life again?" That comment hit deeper than he knew. "Something like that," I replied. But there was an edge to my voice that made Oliver raise an eyebrow. "All right then," he nodded, understanding without needing a full explanation. That was always our dynamic. He could read me better than most people. "Let's get to work. Go change, and we'll see what you remember." I headed to the locker room and caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. My dress shirt was straining at the buttons, and dark circles shadowed my eyes. A stranger was looking back at me. But somewhere in that stranger's eyes, I could see a flicker of the old Marcus. The one who didn't take shit from anyone. The one who fought for what he believed in. That was the moment I really decided I was going to change. Not for Claire, not to save my marriage, but for me. The first week of training was absolute hell. My body screamed with every punch I threw. My lungs burned after just a few minutes of movement. My shoulders felt like they were tearing apart when trying to do even a fraction of what I used to be capable of. But I was determined. I started coming in every morning at 5 a.m., putting in work before heading to the office, then coming back after work for another session. The regulars started to recognize me, giving nods of respect for the consistent effort I was showing. There was this old guy, Lucas, probably in his 60s, but still built like a brick shithouse, who sometimes gave me pointers. "Twist your hips more on that right cross," or "keep your guard up, son." His guidance was gruff, but helpful. Oliver hooked me up with a nutrition plan, too. "You're eating like shit. That's half your problem," he told me bluntly. "All that takeout and processed crap is making you soft." I cut out all the processed food that Claire kept stocking our pantry with and started meal prepping on Sundays: chicken, steak, fish, and plenty of vegetables. Claire noticed but didn't say anything at first. She just watched with a confused look as I packed lunches instead of eating the takeout she'd order. "What are you doing?" she finally asked on the third Sunday of my meal prep. "Making my lunches for the week," I replied, without looking up from the containers I was filling. "Since when do you cook?" Her tone was skeptical, almost accusatory. "Since now." She hovered in the kitchen doorway, clearly unsettled by this change. Is this some kind of New Year's resolution or something? It was early December. Nope. She waited for me to elaborate, but I didn't. This was my new approach. Minimal engagement, no more long explanations, no more apologies for doing what I wanted, and no more seeking her approval for my choices. After 3 weeks of consistent training and clean eating, I started seeing changes. My face looked less bloated, my clothes fit a little looser, and I had significantly more energy throughout the day. People at work even commented that I seemed more focused and more assertive in court. One night, Claire was waiting up for me when I got home around 9 p.m. She was sitting on the couch in the living room, still dressed in her work clothes, with an empty wine glass on the coffee table. "Where have you been?" she asked, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the edge in her voice. "Out," I said simply, heading toward the stairs to take a shower. "With who?" "Friends!" She laughed. That mean little laugh she does when she thinks she's caught you in a lie. "What friends?" "You don't have friends," she said. But the laugh died when she saw the look on my face. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and turned to her. "I do now," I said, and continued up to the bathroom. I heard her follow me upstairs, hovering outside the bathroom door as I stripped off my gym clothes. "You've been acting weird for weeks, Marcus," she said through the door. "Going to the gym, cooking your own food, staying out late. What's going on?" I turned on the shower. "Nothing's going on. I'm just making some changes." "What kind of changes? Why?" I looked at her directly, perhaps the first time in months I'd really held eye contact with her. "Because I want to." She blinked, surprised by my directness. Is this because of what I said at Thanksgiving? Are you still upset about that?" "I'm not upset about anything," I said calmly. "I'm just living my life." "But Claire, I need to shower. It's been a long day." I closed the bathroom door in her face, another first. I usually left it open, let her come and go as she pleased, let her continue conversations while I showered. Not anymore. I needed boundaries and was finally setting them. Later that night, she tried to initiate sex, the first time in months. I declined, saying I was tired from training. The look of shock on her face was almost comical. She wasn't used to rejection. "Are you serious right now?" she asked, propping herself up on her elbow. "Yeah, I'm beat. Good night." I turned away from her and fell asleep almost immediately, the exhaustion from the day's workout pulling me under. About 6 weeks into my new routine, I had lost 25 pounds of fat and put on some serious muscle. I was starting to look like my old self again. More importantly, I was starting to feel like my old self, confident, focused, and in control of my own life. The changes weren't just physical. I found myself speaking up more at work, challenging senior attorneys when I disagreed with their approach to cases, and offering my own strategies instead of just following orders. I also reconnected with old friends from law school and college, guys I had drifted away from because Claire always found them boring or beneath us. Christmas came and went. We did the obligatory family visits, but I kept an emotional distance the whole time. When Claire's mom made a passive-aggressive comment about my new appearance, "Hope you're not getting too obsessed with the gym, Marcus. Narcissism isn't attractive." I just smiled and said, "Thanks for your concern, Catherine," and walked away to chat with Thomas instead. Before, I would have stewed in silent resentment, but now I simply refused to engage with her toxicity. One Saturday morning in January, I came home from a session with Oliver to find Claire in the kitchen making coffee. She turned and actually did a double take when she saw me. "Jesus, Marcus, you look different." I grabbed a protein shake from the fridge. Yeah, she waited for me to elaborate, but I didn't give her the satisfaction. That was our new dynamic. She would fish for information, and I would give her the bare minimum. It was driving her fucking crazy. She leaned against the counter, coffee mug in hand, studying me. "The guys at the office must be giving you shit for getting so fit." I shrugged. "Not really. Most of them have asked me for workout tips, actually." "Oh." She seemed disappointed that there wasn't some negative consequence to my transformation. "Well, some of the girls are coming over tonight for wine," she said after a moment. "You should join us." I knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted to show off the new me to her friends, probably to spin some bullshit story about how she encouraged me to get in shape, how it was all her idea. She wanted to take credit for my hard work, just like she always did. "Can't," I replied. "Going to the Rodriguez fight with Oliver and the guys." Her face fell. "You didn't tell me about that. Didn't know I needed permission," I said, heading upstairs to shower. "It's not about permission, Marcus," she called after me, irritation clear in her voice. "It's about common courtesy, letting your wife know your plans." I stopped on the stairs and looked back at her. "You're right. So, as a courtesy, I'm letting you know I'll be out tonight. I continued upstairs, smiling to myself at the speechless look on her face. That night, I got dressed in jeans that actually fit right and a Henley that showed off my shoulders. As I was grabbing my keys, Claire intercepted me at the door, already dressed for her girls' night in a low-cut top with full makeup. "You look nice," she said, reaching out to touch my chest. Her eyes had that look, the one she used to get when she wanted something from me. Once upon a time, that look would have had me tripping over myself to please her. I stepped back out of her reach. "Thanks, don't wait up." That was the first time I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear like I'd hurt her, but fear that she was losing control. Fear that the punching bag she'd been using for years was suddenly standing up straight and walking away. Over the next few weeks, Claire's behavior shifted dramatically. She started texting me throughout the day with little messages asking how court was going, if I wanted her to pick up dinner or just checking in. She began dressing sexier around the house, walking around in those little shorts she knew I liked and forgetting to wear a bra under her t-shirts. She started asking about my cases, pretending to be interested in the details, and suggesting date nights, something she hadn't done in years. One night in February, she actually cooked dinner, not just ordered takeout, but genuinely cooked. She set the table with candles and everything, creating an atmosphere of romance that had been absent from our home for a long time. "What's the occasion?" I asked, loosening my tie as I came in. "No occasion," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just thought it would be nice to have a real dinner together. We've both been so busy lately." Translation: You've been busy. I've been right here waiting for you to go back to being my doormat. I sat down and took a bite of the salmon she'd prepared. I had to admit it was good. She had always been a decent cook when she bothered to do it, which was rarely. "How was work?" she asked, pouring me a glass of wine. "Fine, preparing for the Wilson trial. You?" "Oh, the usual agency drama," she replied, leaning forward to give me a view down her blouse. "Actually, I got some good news today. They're considering me for the creative director position." "That's great," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't wish professional failure on her. "Yeah, it would mean more money, more responsibility. I'd be the youngest CD they've ever had," she said, twirling her wine glass between her fingers. "We should celebrate. Maybe take a weekend trip somewhere. The Hamptons, maybe?" I took another bite of salmon, considering my response. "I don't think so, Claire. I've got the Wilson trial coming up. Need to stay focused." Her smile faltered. "Well, maybe after the trial then? We haven't been away together in ages. We'll see." She reached across the table and put her hand on mine. "Marcus, I know things have been different between us lately. I feel like we're drifting apart." "No shit, Sherlock. I miss you," she continued, her voice soft. "I miss us." I looked at her hand on mine. Once that touch would have sent electricity through me. Now I felt nothing. Just a clinical observation that her nails were freshly manicured. She was wearing the expensive perfume I'd bought for our anniversary, and her wedding ring caught the candlelight as she tried to manipulate me yet again. "Claire," I said, pulling my hand away gently but firmly, "I appreciate dinner, but I'm not sure what you're expecting here." "I'm not expecting anything," she said quickly. "I just want us to reconnect, to get back to how we were." And that was the problem. I didn't want to go back to how we were, back to being the guy who took her shit with a smile, back to feeling inadequate in my own home. "I'm not sure that's possible," I said finally. Her face hardened for a split second before she controlled it. "Why not? Because of one stupid joke at Thanksgiving? You're still hung up on that?" And there it was. The real Claire breaking through the facade of the attentive, loving wife she'd been playing for weeks. "It wasn't just one joke, Claire," I said calmly. "It was years of little cuts. Years of you putting me down, making me feel like I wasn't good enough. Years of me accepting that treatment because I thought that's what marriage was. Compromising yourself until there's nothing left." She sat back, shocked at my directness. "That's not fair. I've always supported you." "No, you haven't. You've tolerated me when I did what you wanted and ridiculed me when I didn't." "That's not true." Her voice rose defensively. "I've stood by you when you settled for being just another prosecutor instead of aiming higher. I've introduced you to people who could help your career. I've tried to motivate you to be better." "Motivate me?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Is that what you call publicly humiliating me? Making jokes about my sexual performance to your family? Comparing me to your ex? That's motivation?" "You're twisting things," she said, but her eyes shifted away from mine. She knew I was right. "No, Claire. For the first time in years, I'm seeing things clearly." I stood up from the table. Thanks for dinner. I'm going to the gym. Of course you are, she muttered bitterly. That's all you care about now. I paused at the door. No, it's not all I care about. I care about my work. I care about my self-respect. I care about being around people who actually value me. The gym is just the place where I remember who I used to be before I let you convince me I wasn't enough. I left her sitting there, staring at the candles melting between us, the physical manifestation of what was happening to our marriage. About 3 months after that fateful Thanksgiving, I won a very important case at work. The evidence was circumstantial but solid, and I had spent weeks preparing, staying late at the office and practicing my arguments with Oliver. Explain it to me like I'm a regular guy, not a lawyer, he'd say, helping me refine my delivery to make it accessible to the jury. When the verdict came in, guilty on all counts, it was incredibly vindicating. The victim's family hugged me, the district attorney clapped me on the back in congratulations, and even the judge made a comment about the exceptional quality of the prosecution. The DA took the whole team out for drinks at Sullivan's, an upscale bar near the courthouse where a lot of lawyers hung out. I was enjoying the camaraderie with my colleagues when Claire showed up uninvited. Surprise, she said, sliding into the booth next to me and putting her hand on my thigh in front of everyone. Thought I'd come celebrate with my successful husband. My colleagues looked uncomfortable. They'd never met Claire before because she always declined my invitations to office events, saying they sounded boring or that she didn't want to listen to lawyers talk shop all night. How did you know where we were? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. Oh, I have my ways, she giggled, but it sounded forced. She'd probably been tracking my phone or following my social media check-ins. The ADA across from me, Vanessa, gave Claire a tight smile. So you're Marcus's wife. Nice to finally meet you. He did amazing work on the Wilson case. Of course he did, Claire said, squeezing my thigh possessively. I always knew he had it in him. Sometimes he just needs a little push. Right, honey? I removed her hand from my leg. Would you excuse us for a minute? I said to my colleagues, then guided Claire away from the table toward the exit. Once outside on the sidewalk, I turned to her. What are you doing, Claire? What? I can't be proud of my husband? She tried to put her arms around my neck, but I stepped back, keeping my distance. Cut the shit! You've never cared about my work before. Her face hardened. What is your problem lately? You're never home, you barely talk to me, you're obviously working out for some reason. Her eyes narrowed suspiciously. Are you cheating on me? Is that what this is about? You finally found someone who fucks you right? I actually laughed at the irony. That's rich coming from you. Her face went pale. What's that supposed to mean? I just stared at her. I had seen a text from her friend Ryan when her phone buzzed one night while she was in the shower. I wasn't stupid. The late work meetings, the new lingerie I never saw her wear, the defensive way she guarded her phone. I had my suspicions for months but hadn't confronted her because, honestly, I didn't care enough anymore. Nothing, I said finally. Go home, Claire. I'm celebrating with my team tonight. I'm your wife, she hissed. You don't get to dismiss me like some... Like what? Like how you've dismissed me for years? Like how you humiliated me in front of your family? Like how you've been treating me like I'm nothing but a joke since the day we got married? She stepped back, shock evident on her face. People entering and leaving the bar were starting to look our way, witnessing our confrontation. We'll talk about this at home, she said quietly, trying to regain control of the situation. No, we won't, I replied firmly, because I'm done talking. I turned to go back inside, but she grabbed my arm. What does that mean? You're done talking? I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. It means I'm done, Claire. Done with the marriage, done with the mind games, done with feeling like shit every time I walk through our front door. Her grip tightened. You can't just be done. We're married. We took vows. Vows that included respect and fidelity, neither of which you've honored. She flinched at the mention of fidelity, but recovered quickly. So you're just going to throw away 6 years of marriage just like that? No, not just like that. After years of trying to be good enough for you and realizing it's impossible. After watching you flirt with other men in front of me. After hearing you make jokes at my expense to anyone who would listen. I removed her hand from my arm. You threw away our marriage a long time ago, Claire. I'm just finally admitting it's over. She was crying now, but I knew those tears. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of frustration and anger that she wasn't getting her way. You can't do this to me, she said, her voice breaking. Not now, not when I'm up for the CD position. Do you know how it will look if my husband leaves me right now? And there it was. Not I love you, don't leave, or I'll change, I promise. But how will this affect my image? I don't care how it looks, Claire. I don't care about your job or your image or what your friends will think. I care about the fact that for the first time in years, I feel like myself again. And that self deserves better than what you've been giving. I walked back into the bar, leaving her standing on the sidewalk, mascara running down her face. My colleagues pretended not to notice when I returned, but Vanessa gave me a small nod of approval. For the first time in my adult life, I'd chosen myself over Claire's demands, and it felt fucking amazing. 2 weeks later, I moved most of my stuff into a new apartment downtown. It wasn't fancy, just a one-bedroom in an old building with exposed brick and tall windows. But it was mine. There was no designer furniture picked out by Claire, no accent pieces that cost more than my first car, just simple, comfortable stuff that I actually liked. I hired a divorce attorney, not someone from my office, but a guy Oliver knew who specialized in cases where one spouse had significantly more assets than the other. Claire had a trust fund I'd never touched and family money that had paid for our down payment on the house. I wanted a clean break, not a cent more than I was legally entitled to. Claire had been in full panic mode since I left, alternating between rage, tears, and desperate attempts to seduce me back. Nothing worked. I'd filed for divorce, and her carefully constructed world was crumbling around her. She tried everything. Showing up at my apartment unannounced, I never let her in. Sending lingerie pics at 2 a.m. I blocked her number except for necessary divorce communications. Even trying to get mutual friends to intervene on her behalf. Most of them sided with me after hearing my side of the story, which only enraged her further. "You're making a mistake," she said, during one time I agreed to meet her for coffee to discuss logistics. We were at a neutral location, a Starbucks halfway between her house, well, her house now, and my apartment. "We can go to counseling. I can change," she pleaded, her eyes wide and desperate. "It's too late for that," I said, sliding a folder with the proposed division of assets across the table. "I think you'll find this fair. I'm not asking for alimony despite the income disparity. I just want my personal belongings and my half of our joint savings." She ignored the folder completely. "Is there someone else? Is that what this is about?" "No," I said honestly. "This is about me finally respecting myself enough to walk away from someone who doesn't respect me." "That's not true. I respect you," she insisted, her voice rising slightly. "You have a funny way of showing it." She tried to take my hand, but I pulled back before she could touch me. "Marcus, please," she said, her voice breaking. "I love you. I know I've made mistakes, but everyone does. No marriage is perfect." "I don't need perfect, Claire," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "I just need basic decency, and you've shown me repeatedly that you're not capable of that." She started crying then. Not the fake tears from before, but real ones. Part of me felt bad for her. But then I remembered all the times she'd made me feel small, insignificant, and worthless. My sympathy had its limits. "Just look at the proposal," I said, standing up to leave. "Have your lawyer contact mine if you have any questions." I walked out feeling lighter with every step, the weight of our toxic relationship finally falling away. Claire kept calling, kept texting, kept begging for help, for money, for connections, for anything she could get from me. I ignored most of it, only responding when it was directly related to divorce proceedings. "Please, Marcus," she texted in March. "I can't make the mortgage payment this month." "Sell the house," I replied simply. "It's too big for one person anyway. My parents won't help me. They say I made my bed. Now I have to lie in it." "Sounds like good advice," I texted back. "How can you be so cold after everything we've been through?" she demanded. I thought about that one before answering. "I'm not being cold, Claire. I'm being fair. You made choices. Those choices had consequences. I'm not responsible for fixing problems you created. I thought you loved me. Once I did, but you made it impossible to keep loving you." She didn't have a response for that. The last time I saw her was at the divorce proceedings in April, 4 months after that fateful Thanksgiving dinner. 4 months that had completely changed my life. She looked terrible. She had lost weight, but not in a healthy way. There were dark circles under her eyes. Her hair was dull, and her designer clothes had been replaced by something off the rack. She tried to approach me afterward in the courthouse hallway. "Marcus, please," she begged, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have nothing left. I lost my job, my friends. I might lose the house. I need help." I looked at her for a long moment. "Like you helped me when I was down? Like you built me up instead of tearing me down for laughs? Like you treated me with dignity and respect instead of like some joke since the day we got married?" "I know I was wrong. I'm sorry," she said, tears welling in her eyes. What more do you want me to say? Nothing, I said simply. I don't want you to say anything. I don't want anything from you at all. So that's it? 6 years of marriage and you're just done with me? She asked incredulously. Yes, I replied. I had no more anger, no more hurt, just a calm certainty that I was doing the right thing. Goodbye, Claire. As I walked away, Oliver was waiting by my car. He'd come for moral support and had been my rock through the whole process. All good, brother? He asked, eyeing Claire, who was still watching from the courthouse steps. Yeah, I said, feeling the weight finally lift completely. All good. We headed to the gym. I had a new trainee waiting for me, some guy going through a rough divorce who needed to find himself again. Funny how life works out sometimes. 3 months later, I was officially divorced. Claire had finally accepted the inevitable and signed the papers without further drama. I heard she had to sell the house and move into a small apartment. She had to get a job at a much less prestigious firm and basically start her life over. She still texts occasionally, especially when she's been drinking, sometimes begging, sometimes angry. I don't respond. I don't need to. My life is moving forward. I got promoted to senior prosecutor, and I'm dating a veterinarian named Lily who actually respects me and is, quite frankly, a fucking smoke show. But that's not the main attraction. She's kind, supportive, and treats me like an equal partner, something I hadn't experienced in years. I competed in my first boxing match in 10 years last month. I didn't win, but I went the distance with a guy half my age, which felt like victory enough for me. Last week, I ran into Claire's brother Thomas at a bar downtown. I expected it to be awkward, but he surprised me. Hey man, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. You look good. Thanks, I said cautiously. How have you been? Good. He hesitated for a moment. Look, I know things ended badly with you and my sister, but I want you to know that Thanksgiving shit, that wasn't cool. I should have said something. I shrugged. Water under the bridge now. He ordered us both a beer, but I refused, asking for something non-alcoholic instead. I'd cut back on drinking significantly since getting in shape. For what it's worth, Thomas continued, I think you did the right thing. Claire, she's always been like that, even when we were kids. She'd put other people down to make herself feel better. She doing okay? I asked, more out of politeness than actual concern. She's surviving. Had to swallow her pride and take a job at a smaller agency. She's living in some apartment out in the suburbs. Parents are still giving her the cold shoulder. He took a sip of his drink. But honestly, maybe it's good for her. She's never had to face consequences before. We chatted a bit more and then parted ways amicably. It felt like closure somehow. Some guys at the gym tell me I should feel bad for Claire, that karma hit her too hard. But I don't feel that way at all. You reap what you sow in this life. She spent years tearing me down, and when I finally stood up and walked away, her whole carefully constructed world fell apart. That's not on me. And me? I'm finally harvesting the respect I should have demanded years ago. From others, sure, but more importantly, from myself. So if you're in a relationship where someone makes you feel small, where they use you as a punchline, where they slowly chip away at your self-worth, know that you can walk away. It won't be easy. It won't happen overnight. But on the other side of that hard decision is a life where you recognize your own value, and no joke, no matter how many people laugh at it, is worth sacrificing that.